when we fought the American Revolutionary War, we were printing the Continental, which is fine. And oftentimes when you're fighting wars, you need to print paper currency. The founders were well aware of that. And so by the time we had won the Revolutionary War, the amount of continental currency that had been printed was substantial. So it devalued in its worth. Knowing so, the founders set up fail safes through the documents. And Thomas Jefferson was beyond brilliant. They basically had the Articles of Confederation, your Continental Congress is operating, and then we amended that to adopt the US Constitution in 1789. The Continental was printed into the oblivion, and we established a system of weights and measures. And in order to have sound money, you have to have weights and measures. And so Thomas Jefferson figured that out. They took all the Spanish mill dollars, all the global currency, whether it was from France or Britain, they melted them down, and then they took the average of that, measured in grains, and basically they made a dollar, 371 and a quarter grains of silver. A dollar was 371 and a quarter grains. They then established the ratio of 15-1. So a gold eagle was basically that 15-1 ratio, so 23.7 grains of gold. And then a copper penny or cent was 1/100th of basically what you had in your silver content. Why that matters is it was actually impossible to say that your dollar was worth less than a dollar of silver, because the dollar was a unit of measure, just like a foot is a unit of measure, just like a yard is a unit of measure. And that's what stabilizes your currency. And by making the ratio there, if you want to adjust because you're having issues with oversupply of gold or silver, you just adjust the weights. And then you can do that through the coinage acts, which they've done over time. We had a Coinage Act of 1792, which spells that out, and people can go look at. We had modifications to that a few times. Then 1834, we had another Coinage Act. Go through the Civil War, which was a critical time point in U.S. history, in the sense of somewhat the country being stolen. By 1873, we shifted from a silver standard, a bimetallic or a trimetallic standard, to a gold standard, which a lot of people love, right? And that's usually where a lot of people start in their conversations about going back to a gold standard. But what was unique in the United States is we had a bimetallic, which again, with copper really is a trimetallic standard, that actually allowed free coinage. So the federal government, if you mined, just like Bitcoin, Michael, when you mine, right? If you were mining silver, gold, copper, you could take it to the US Mint and they would stamp it with our government to make it a coin. Otherwise, it's just a round. That's the distinction in the coin world that a lot of people aren't aware of. So coin is government minted, and that 371 and a quarter grains established till 1873. They've manipulated the language over time where individuals don't understand what terminology meant. When you're talking about a weight and measure being a dollar, and that a dollar could only be silver, and that today you exchange a Federal Reserve, it's really a token, a piece of paper, right, and we call it a dollar as a common term. It's so far gone for what the original intent of sound money principles was at that time to what it is current day. Throughout US history, we've had three central banks. We had the first Bank of the United States, basically that came out when Alexander Hamilton's time was going on. It's Federalist versus anti-Federalist. This battle is constantly going on. We had the second central bank of the United States, which Andrew Jackson destroyed, right? He goes into the den of thieves. He roots them out. He calls them vipers. He doesn't renew the charter. And then we go the whole way from that point to 1913. And that's when the formation of the Federal Reserve is, which is the great book, The Creature from Jekyll Island by J. Edward Griffin, that many people know. And that was when they went to Jekyll Island and they established how this financial system that we currently operate in would function over the next period of time. We're in our third central bank. The founders warned us about having centralized banking. That was supposed to be to the states.
Since you were just talking about the 371 grains of silver, if you convert that to the buying power, the purchasing power of today's time, Jenny, then that 371 grains, that's like 0.85 of an ounce. So an ounce of silver start like $37, $38. So $1 actually has the purchasing power, should have the purchasing power, basically about $31. If the dollar actually represented, the 371 grains of silver because of the price of silver, which is pretty suppressed anyway, but because of the price of silver, that dollar should represent about $31 worth of buying purchasing power.